Welcome to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, where we connect the wisdom and experience of ministry leaders to the realities of ministry in the trenches. We journey with ministry leaders through all the hidden aspects that help us to become fruitful ministers. Here at the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, we discuss the stuff that no one told you about Catholic ministry and strive to help ministry leaders succeed from the beginning. Our hosts are Christy Cabanis, the Director for Missionary Discipleship for the Diocese of Cleveland, and Sarah Jarzembowski, the Director for Marriage and Family Life at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish in Crofton, Maryland. Please show your support for our efforts by clicking like and subscribe and commenting below. And now here are Sarah and Christy.
I mean, we've been at this for a good, 20 minutes now. I think we can bring some folks in.
And I'm assuming that you guys can edit these podcasts if necessary.
We can, but we don't.
Sarah's good at that, yeah.
We don't though, but I don't.
Yeah, well, I just got the notice that you're now recording this, so.
Yes. So folks, you get the raw deal, even though we've been recording we haven't been recording for 20 minutes and we've been talking. And oh gosh, Christy just went off on Philly, Baltimore, Pittsburghian accents.
They're different.
They're different, but we sound similar. But anyway, So we have with us today, folks, welcome, Mr. Bob McCarty, who's spent his entire professional career working for the Catholic Church at the parish, diocesan, and national levels in pastoral ministry. He is a consultant offering retreats, formation in leadership skills, and assisting ministry organizations in strategic pastoral planning. Bob is an adjunct facility. Let's try that again. It's live, folks. Bob is adjunct faculty. Let's try that one. That's the right word. At the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and involved in his home parish, St. Francis of Assisi in Fulton, Maryland, serving in marriage preparation ministry and on the adult faith formation team. Bob's newest book is The Heart of a Disciple through Paulist Press. Oh, we like Paulist Press here at this household. His hobbies include rock climbing, adventure travel, and grandparenting. And Bob, a little note for everybody, some little trivia is Bob and I both graduated from the same high school.
Whoa.
A couple of years apart. But we graduated from the same high school. So all of you Archbishop Wood Vikings out there, woot. Archbishop Wood High School, shout out to you in Warminster, Pennsylvania, Archdiocese of Philadelphia. We are Viking strong here today. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I remember being in youth ministry, going to NCYC, and seeing you leading the NCYC and NFCYM, and just listening to your words of wisdom as a young ministry leader, and just following you throughout. And our ministry friendship and outside of ministry friendship has just grown through the years, and I just feel so blessed by that. God's really brought us together so many different times, and I've just learned so much from you. So I'm grateful that you're on our podcast today, and that I can introduce you to my other friend, Christy. Yeah.
Hello.
So welcome. So we have been talking a little bit about ministry in the parish. We had been talking a little bit about, well, let's talk a little bit about you first, Bob. Let's ask that first.
My favorite subject.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So there's more to the bio, obviously, Bob, but I mean, just because we are talking to pastoral ministers, and they know what their story is and how they got voluntold, looped in, brought on unwillingly, whatever the stories are. But can you tell us your story about how you got into ministry and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, it was really interesting. And this will not match up with any of your stories, just because I've been doing youth ministry for such a long time. that when I started in youth ministry, it wasn't called youth ministry. And that's because, especially in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, but I suspect across the country, ministry was a Protestant term. Protestants have ministers. We had priests. So in Philadelphia, we would talk more about CYO than we would about youth ministry, at least when I first started. And it would be CYO. And at that time, CYO was a more comprehensive. It wasn't just sports. It was really the church's approach to young people in parishes was CYO. And then, and out of that experience, the CYO or the youth department would offer retreats and leadership training, and I started to attend that. It's funny, my Catholic school, Archbishop Wood, was not the way I got into ministry. It was actually being attached to the youth retreat house for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, being part of those, going on those retreats, being part of the team, and then deciding that I think we need to make this available to everyone. And so it was the retreat experience, leadership program experience, and service. As a kid who lived in rural Pennsylvania, outside of Philly, my service experiences took me into the city all the time. And I got to experience firsthand some of the challenges in urban living. And I just thought all that was important, but it wasn't, but this could be a 30-minute thing. But just so you know, at that time, youth ministry was not a career. It wasn't a job in parishes. And in fact, my own research when I was at NSCOIM, there weren't parish youth ministers yet in the 70s.
Okay.
But there was also, we were just starting to see laity taking on roles like religious educators, becoming DREs. So that 70s, I really do think Catholic youth ministry in the United States is a direct reflection of Vatican II. I think Vatican II provided the theological ministerial impetus to the laity taking on roles. And it happened first, I think, in religious education, then it started in youth ministry. And I just kind of rode that wave. We didn't even have a language for what we're doing. We were just doing it. And we were faking it because this is almost embarrassing to say, there wasn't even a vision statement yet. The original vision of youth ministry was written in 1976. I already had a master's degree by then. I was already doing ministry. I just didn't know what I was doing. And when you had asked me to think about what I needed when I started, well, why don't I just jump to that for a second? That's what I needed. And I want to say this with our audience. I want to say that one of the critical issues is having a vision for what you're trying to do. If you can't name your objectives, how do you do any kind of planning around programming, resources? How do you do any of that if you don't know where you're going? And so I've maintained for a long time, Christy, that in order to do any kind of ministry well, you first have to have a vision. You have to have a mission statement. What am I trying to do? Then you have to create, I call it you got to create the ministry structure that supports your vision. You need a structure. And then within that structure, you need to have identified, clearly defined leadership roles that help you implement the structure. So whenever people are planning, like if I was brand new in a parish, brand new, my first question would be, what's our vision here for youth ministry, for adolescent catechesis, for adult faith formation? What are we trying to do?
Yeah.
And only then can you back up and start creating a structure, look for resources, develop programming, and you got to develop those leadership roles within that structure that allow the vision to be implemented. That was like one of my, that's a soapbox. That was like a whole soapbox right there.
But wait, can I ask a question about that, Bob? Because I think that sometimes when we talk about vision, it sounds similar to when we say prayer in the church. Like people are saying this word, but there's not a structure even around that. So what does vision mean?
Yeah, and this is where the role of the wider community comes in. One of the advantages that we've had in the United States is actually a vision statement. In 1976, had the original vision of youth ministry. In 1997, to do the renewing division, and I know we're looking at renewing, but having a vision statement that says, here are the goals for youth ministry. Here are the components for a comprehensive approach. What that allows you to do is two really important things. It allows you to create resources to the vision. So all those resource providers out there, the Catholic publishing world and all those youth ministry world, they can all create resources towards a shared vision. The second thing it allows you to do is create training programs to a vision. So, and I'm saying that, and not just because of my experience in the US, but I know this, I'm not a very humble person. I've worked with five different countries' bishop conferences because they looked at the United States and said, how are you guys doing what you're doing? And so 5 different countries, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, England, and South Korea. I've spent time in each of those countries, and I said, the first thing you need is a vision statement. And that they did that. And the second is you need some kind of a national structure that brings your leaders together. And they did that. I said, because now you have a chance to develop resourcing and training towards a shared vision. Because if not, everybody's off doing their own thing.
Yep.
And there's no sense of where we're heading here. And so just like I think Vatican II gave the church direction, having a written statement that your country buys into, that the bishops' conference buys into, and promulgates. And we all know how bishops' statements get written. They don't write them. You know, and any statement worth its weight, it was written by the folks who are in the field doing this work, and then it gets edited and approved by the bishops. And I think that's the appropriate process. I do. So that, I have no idea what your question was, Christy. I don't know where. I don't
That's
know.
okay. That's the way this goes.
No,
That's
I think you
It's
answered
fine,
it because
fine.
we're talking about like what is the vision,
Oh.
and because people are scared. They think that like that's something complicated that's beyond my scope or ability. And I think even the starting person can come up with, you know, I don't know, I want to be reaching all the Catholic kids in the neighborhood, or you know what I mean? What, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's important too to know that, like, what the vision of the pastor is.
Yeah.
Because your vision and the pastor's vision may or may not sync up. Right. So where does it sync and where is it a little bit different? And how do you wrestle with that?
Sarah, I tell you, I recommend to folks when they're applying for parish positions, that should be your first question. What's your vision for youth ministry in this parish? And if that can't be answered by whoever's doing the interview, whether it's the pastor or a team of parishioners, if that can't be answered, well, you have to know that going in. Because if you don't have a vision, how do you ever know if you're being successful or effective? You have nothing to assess what you're doing. And if you're not careful, you wind up with you wind up with? You wind up with ministry by personal preference. That's what I call it. Ministry by personal preference. I will do the things I like to do. You know, I will do the things that I think are important, but that misses the whole community sense of what does the community think is important for our young people. Does that make sense? That whole idea of if you're not, that ministry by personal preference is like a quagmire. But if there's nothing else, that's what you wind up doing. And that's why I think.
Or I think sometimes too, it's self-service. So like I've seen young adult ministers get into that ministry and then create ministries that serve themselves and not necessarily the community. And I want to say too, Sarah, like, I feel like there's a same side or two sides to the same coin. One is you could have a pastor or a bishop with a very specific vision and maybe yours doesn't line up with his. And you can also have a guy that doesn't have a vision at all and is doing this thing like Bob is saying, like we're all just going to do what we do. And then everybody is like mice or cats running around and there's no order or unification. And then two, I wonder, how are we assessing if we're being effective or not?
Yeah, just get the kids together so that they can play and talk to each other.
Well, see, now that's what happens, because if you're going to a parish new, if you ask parents, what are you looking for in our youth ministry program, our adolescent catechesis program? And when I say youth ministry program, I am talking holistically and comprehensively here, just so our audience knows that. But if you ask parents, oftentimes what they're really thinking is, entertain my kid, keep them off the street, and if you have time, make them believe in God because you're the professional.
Yeah.
All right. And so what an incredible trap that is for a person going into a parish. And it becomes doubly challenging if you're following a youth minister who's already been there for a while, because then what happens, people say, well, let's just continue their vision, or sometimes it's that didn't work. We need to go in a new direction. Yeah. So there, and that's all code language. That's all that is. It's like, this is not happening. So anyway, so that idea of having I think every parish probably has a mission statement. And so it's a real fair starting point to say, okay, if this is the parish mission statement, what's our mission for young people within this mission statement? That's a really fair way to look at this if you're going into a parish. So creating that really clear vision. When I've done this twice now, Christy, it's 2 different parishes, one in inner city Baltimore, and now where I am at St. Francis, where as a volunteer living in those parishes with no professional staff doing youth ministry, I was asked to help create a youth ministry program. And because of my background and because of my work, and I've always done this as a professional, I've always been involved as a volunteer in my parish, because I have a belief that our young people reinvent themselves every 3 years. The changes are that quick and they're subtle. And if you're not with them, you won't know it. Right. And so, all right, and this is a personal thing. I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but you can edit this out. I don't like going to workshops by anyone who's not working with kids already. I really do. I really just think part of the test here is, are you working with young people right now? Like, when's the last time you talked to a young person? So twice now in 2 different parishes, 2 very different settings, helping create an established youth ministry program. The first 3 to 5 months, we never met with young people. We developed a team, a structure first, because that was essential if you want your program to succeed. If you want your ministry to be effective, you got to spend more time initially with your adult volunteers, and which raises the issue. If you're new to a parish, or if you're coming into a parish, if you're in a parish right now, if you don't have an adult team, I think that should be your priority, because one of the things that happens with people, especially folks who are new to ministry. Are you getting a sense that I had a whole stack of soapboxes here that I can just jump on at any point?
We're excited about that.
Well, but here's what happens. If when you're new to ministry, your initial passion and your excitement was, oh my gosh, church was so important to me. I encountered Jesus because of my parish. I want to bring that to other young people. So you have that burst of passion for doing this. But if you're not careful, it becomes their ministry, not the parish's ministry. And one of the difficulties in ministry of any kind is not just youth ministry, it's across the board. I've believed that if you're in an identified leadership role in any kind of ministry, and I think this is as true for the pastor as it is for the director of liturgy, the DRE, pastoral associates, across the board. I think that they have there's 3 images for pastoral leadership that I've encountered. because part of the challenge here is I think we also oftentimes go into this work with poor images of pastoral leadership. So I think there are three images that work. One is a good pastoral leader is the keeper of the vision. Pastoral leaders have to be able to use vision language. They have to keep reminding people why we are doing certain things, calling people to the vision. The second image for a good pastoral leader, they are the orchestrator of gifts. They are not the incarnation of all giftedness. Their role really is to be the orchestrator. It's St. Paul's theology of ministry. Gifts are given to the community to meet the needs of the community. The role of the leader is to identify gifts and connect them with the needs. So they are the orchestrator of the gifts of the community. And the third, they are the mobilizer of the village. We speak often in the church about it takes a village to raise a child. The bishops have said it takes an entire faith community to foster the faith of our young people. Somebody's got to mobilize the village. That's the role of pastoral leaders today. And so we go into this work so well intentioned that I want to bring kids to Jesus. Okay, well, good luck with that and the 5 kids that you can minister to. But if you want to bring, all right, I know I'm being a little sarcastic here, but oh well, there we are. It's your podcast, not mine. Anyway. But we go in with this great energy and fervor, but it's not always effective or efficient. It's not just what I can do. My role is what can the community do? How do I mobilize the community on behalf of our young people? So how do I develop the team to reach even more young people? And of course, part of that team is how do I call young people to leadership? That whole idea of peer ministry, and how does that happen? But it really does take a vision for what we're trying to do, a structure for how we're going to do it, and clear identified pastoral leader roles within that structure.
I think, Bob, one of the things that gets difficult about what you're talking about is that the urgency of the present gets in the way, and the adversary tinkers in ways that make it feel like what you are talking about is taking us away from the needs of the church and what is really important. And what is really important, and those things that are right in our face, which are the parents that are in our space, the children that are in front of us, the programs that are coming up real fast, Lent that came up super fast in front of us, Easter that's only a couple of weeks away, all of these things that come up, and you're saying, don't worry about all of that. That's going to take care of itself. We need to take a step back. Don't worry about the teens. The teens are going to be okay. We need to worry about the adult team first. Don't worry about that mad parent who is upset that her teen doesn't have a place to go on Sunday night for youth group. Come here and build your adult team first. Don't worry about that teen who doesn't have a place to go. Come back here and keep track of the vision. Don't worry about that angry. Come over here. Don't worry about that quagmire. Come over here and build this. Don't worry. Come over here. It feels like I need to be over here and fix this. I need to fix this. I don't want people to be angry at me, because when they're angry at me, they're also angry at the church. I don't want them to be angry at the church. I don't want them to be angry about all of there goes the church again. Right. So I feel like this is, this is where I find it very difficult in that trench.
Yeah.
To know what to do.
Can you see the quicksand there? It's like, if we're always doing crisis management, we never solve the underlying issues.
Yeah.
Really, it's and that's what can happen.
Yeah.
We sometimes in parishes, sometimes people get hired, and I know hired implies professional and salaries and all that, and that's true. But most of our parishes don't have professional youth ministers. They have volunteers. But I think the pattern is the same. If we just do crisis management, we're always doing crisis management because there's always going to be those crises. So at some point, how do you play for the long haul? What does it look like to as either a professional paid youth minister or a professional volunteer in a parish? What does it look like for us if we are really thinking about the long haul here? What does that mean? And how do we create the structure? I've often thought for folks who are in this as both vocation and occupation, that one of the tests of how effective you are in your ministry is what's in place 6 months after you leave. And what I mean by that, or what that illustrates for me, is if the ministry we're doing all centers around me and I leave, then the ministry goes with me and we're back to crisis again.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we weren't doing good work while we were there, but now it's over. And I think what really good pastoral leaders do is they figure out how to create a structure that allows the ministry to keep going even if they're not there, so that the next person coming in can pick up on that. So, and it's the only way you can avoid trying to recreate the wheel every time. And so, and we know this. We know that oftentimes the longevity of parish youth ministers specifically ranks right above migrant workers. All right. So if there's going to be turnover, how do you create a structure so that the ministry itself isn't always turning over? So it's like, and this is a hard thing, especially for folks new to church, is can our commitment be to the ongoing ministry? Is our commitment bigger than what I do? Can I create something that's going to have impact beyond my time there? That's a hard thing, but that's what I think professionalism requires. I think professionalism requires a bigger vision for what we're doing here, which has to have those other pieces of vision, structure, leadership roles. That's what we need to keep that ministry moving forward. Well, that was fun. It was fun for me. Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about professional ministry, professional ministers, staff members, but a lot of our listeners, many of our listeners are part-time and volunteer,
Sure.
and those who were kind of called into ministry as parents, voluntold, um, administrative assistants who are just really good at organizing.
Yeah.
Not just because I'm totally not good at organizing. Like that's my admin's biggest plus. I love Carol. She's the best. Like that's, that is part of it. It's not the whole. So what are some things for those folks who don't have 40 hours a week for this, don't have that much time? I mean, maybe 10 if we're lucky, and of that 10, half of that is an event.
Yeah. That whole voluntold kind of thing. My wife Maggie jokes sometimes that she went into confession and came out the youth minister, and I said, "Oh my God, what did you do?" Really? Like, oh Lord, Maggie. I tell you, that's pretty fun.
Oh, Maggie.
All right, I tell you. So Sarah, here's the image I have. I would rather have 20 people giving me 2 hours a week than one person giving me 40 hours a week. And the reason is, the the more people we call into ministry that way, it multiplies their gifts. See, every youth ministry volunteer can say, here's why I do this. Look at the paybacks for me. Look what I've gained from doing ministry with young people, by accompanying them on their journey, by listening to their stories, by praying with them, by knowing their hopes and their fears, their joys and their sorrows. Look what it's done for me. So I'd rather have 20 people who would give me 2 hours a week, because I want 20 caring adults to be known by my kids in the parish. Now I know that you would think, oh, I'd rather have one full-time person. Well, okay, well, yeah, if you can get that one full-time person and you make it their job to get the other 20, boy, that's even better. But I don't know if that makes sense, that as the orchestrator of gifts, we want more people involved, even if they have less time. I would take 40 people a week who want to give me an hour. Just give me an hour. Now, but do you see whose job it is to figure out what do they do with that hour? It's my job. I am the orchestrator of gifts. All right, just a tangent. But when you asked me originally, what did I need when I was first starting in ministry, I said I needed 2 things. I told you one of them. I needed a vision. What are we trying to do here? But the second is, and this is looking back, I wish I had a better understanding of my role, that I was not the doer of all ministry. Yes. I was the animator of ministry. And there's a skill that goes with that. I teach a master's course on pastoral leadership. I've done in 2 or 3 different universities, and these are for full-time people in ministry. And I think one of the essential skills is volunteer management. Because what happens oftentimes, and this could be its own podcast, I mean, it really could, about what does volunteer management look like. Mm-hmm. Volunteer management is calling people into ministry. That's what it is. But I've learned that the 2 things, if people did nothing else but did 2 things, they would find it easier to get volunteers. One is to have a job description, is to have something in writing that says, here's what I'm asking you to do. And the second thing, have a starting point and an ending point on that job description. This is so darn funny. I almost said a nasty word. This is so darn funny, but I forgot it was a podcast. So I think one of the biggest fears of people volunteering in the church is that, oh my God, if I volunteer, it's every Sunday night for the rest of my life, really. And that's why I think that every role, every volunteer role should be written here. It should have a clever title, a description of what you're going to do and when you have to do it. Here's the support I'll provide as the orchestrator of gifts. Here's when this role starts and here's where it ends. So for instance, when you think about volunteer management, ministry management, we tend to concentrate on the first quadrant, which is recruitment. But there's 4 quadrants. There's recruiting, training, supporting, and evaluating our volunteers. And we often think we can't do that because we think evaluating is a bad term. But I think there's a way that evaluation becomes it's a ministry itself to the person who's doing ministry in the parish. Everyone, paid and non-paid, has a right to feedback about what they're doing. So recruiting, training, supporting, and evaluating volunteers, that's a comprehensive approach to volunteer management, to ministry management. Yeah. But we tend to do just the first one. And I believe if we did all 4 quadrants, we would spend less time in recruiting because people would stay. So simple things like job descriptions, simple things like beginning point and ending point, regular support, checking in. How's your ministry going? What have been the benefits to you? What are the benefits to our young people that your gifts have provided? I mean, do you see that? It's just a different way of thinking about ministry and what it means to be a professional minister in the church today.
The other, I think, Bob, to add to that is, like, for me, whenever I was a parish leader and I was recruiting catechists for the faith formation year, I told the existing catechists and I told anybody that I was recruiting, this is for this year. This is for this year. Let's see where we are at the end of the year, how you feel, where your life is, what's going on, and maybe you want to switch grades, maybe you want to stay where you are, maybe you want to step out. All of those are completely allowable, because I think that I felt the same way. I said this at a parish council meeting when I was like 31 years old. I said, the problem with parish ministry is you guys have a life sentence on every assignment, and no one wants to get into that. No one wants to get into these days. Like, I can't say that I'm gonna, go to my grave being the second grade sacrament prep lady. You know what I mean? Like, just can't do it.
Yeah, that's why having an ending point, and at every ending point, a one-on-one meeting with the ministry leader to talk about, because they're the kinds of things that encourage people to stay in the ministry. They are exactly the kind of things, that kind of support and training is exactly what prevents burnout by volunteers and professionals. To have that kind of ongoing support, knowing that there's an endpoint, knowing that I can sign up again. And my experience in both my parishes where I helped create youth ministry was, I never found it hard to get volunteers because people want to do something. And so even if it's all you have to do is, would you provide the snacks? We had this thing. This is so clever. I should go into this as a full-time ministry. I should. We had a job description for something called a CAP, C-A-P, a consistent adult presence. And we had a job description for them. Here's what a CAP does. It comes to our Sunday night gatherings. You don't have to teach anything because that scares them. You don't have to run anything. You don't have to plan anything. All you have to do is come and say hi to kids, call them by name. And we would give them training over how to engage in small talk with young people. Now, and this was so clever. I one time said this so we had these little CAP cards on the front. It was CAP, and here are the 4 or 5 things CAPs do. It was like a job. And on the back, here are 5 or 6 questions you can use to engage young people. And so in conversation. And so if you're a driver to an event, you're a CAP. You get one of these cards. If you're going to be a part of the Sunday night, if you're providing the snacks, you're a CAP. All right. So I shared this one time in a training program, and a parish took it to heart and created CAPs.
Cute.
It was so clever. And I didn't know this, so I got to NCYC, and this parish comes in. They have these fluorescent yellow hats that you can't miss with their parish name on it, CAP across the front of it. It was brilliant.
That's amazing.
Brilliant, so that every kid could find them. that was pretty funny. But I thought, what a clever idea.
That's awesome.
Who would not be okay with being a CAP? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's like, yeah. And so, but do you see? And if they have a good experience, I really believe if they have a good initial experience of being in ministry in the church, they'll stay. They'll want to do something else. Well, can I be a CAP? Okay. Can I be a CAP, but can I sit in on that class? Sure. Well, how about if I maybe taught it? Sure. I mean, do you see what happens? It's like, it's all about the professional minister and how they see their role in that wider ministry community. Orchestrator of gifts, mobilizing the village. Really, it starts with your vision of leadership.
Wow, Bob, we obviously could have you here for days. We won't.
We did none of the stuff you talked about.
That's okay. That's okay.
We didn't do anything that we gave you. I told you that was going to happen.
Oh my God, I have all this neat stuff. Well, anyway.
Well, Bob, we knew all we had to do was wind you up and let you go. So.
Can I just say one other thing too?
Yeah.
The amazing thing about the way that Bob, just for the listener, the way that Bob is describing this vision of ministry is that not only do people then want to stay and do more, they're also going to tell their friends that, hey, there's a really healthy way of doing ministry at my parish. Come and help, come and see, and they'll invite people into it as well. So
Yeah. You know what? And I know you guys have seen this, and I'll bet the viewers of the podcast, there's nothing worse than that first Sunday in September, and the DRE or youth minister gets up in front of the congregation and says, if you don't volunteer, we can't have sixth grade religious education. Oh yeah, there's something that really entices me. I want to be part of a sinking ship. Yeah, please sign me up for that. As opposed to thinking of recruitment as a year-round activity.
Yeah.
And doing it well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because volunteer management is a strategic activity. It's an intentional activity that takes time, but it's not preparing for ministry. It is ministry. Volunteer management is calling people to ministry, and it's the ministry of the leader.
That's really key, Bob. I'm so glad that you said that, especially for places that have transient communities, migrant communities. We live in a place where there are a great deal of military families that PCS change their station frequently. I was just informed one of our children's liturgy of the word families is going to be moving over the summer. I cried a bit because they're really a wonderful family and involved in actually many ministries, not just children's liturgy, but they step in for many things, and they're going to be going to Italy. I might have to visit them.
You are a giver, Sarah.
I might just have to go and check in
are.
on them and make sure they're doing okay and the boys are doing okay. And
your commitment to supporting your parishioners overseas,
supporting the flock
is remarkable.
Impressive.
Yeah,
impressive.
Yeah, you're a giver. You're a giver. I can say it.
When you say, Bob just rolled his eyes into his head. Hopefully that stick there. But when you say recruit all year long, it is important because there are many communities now that we do see people moving throughout the year.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not moving at typical times. They're going to be moving throughout the year. And here in the DC area where Bob, you and I are, we see a lot of that. I had a mom who was going off. She's Coast Guard. She was going off and doing her job for 6 months. So, we had to rethink what ministry was going to look like for her child and her family. Like, what was that going to look like? That was really hard. Like, we're still trying to figure out exactly what that means and what that looks like, and how to get them connected with other families in the parish and things like that. And I'm not sure we fully figured that out, but we know, and it's in the forefront of my mind, and we're thinking about it and praying on it. But again, throughout the year, we have to be working on it and bringing it forward and thinking about it. Bob, do you have off the top of your head, or something we might be able to link later, a resource for how we can help identify people's gifts? Some people are not really good at seeing other people's gifts. Like, we know everybody has God-given gifts and talents, but is there a way of identifying that? Just before we go, is there an identifier?
I know that several dioceses and several parishes use a thing called a gifts assessment.
Okay.
And so I think, Christy, you do something like that?
We have one on the Diocese of Cleveland website. All of the details are there under the missionary discipleship page.
Yeah. So people could take something like that and use that as an identification, but also include in things like what's your time availability? Are there days of the week? Is there amount of time? Are there certain months that are better than other months? I mean, because my experience anymore in the parishes, oh my Lord, people's schedules are absolutely nuts. I mean, I find so many families are overscheduled and they don't know how to get around that. They really don't. That'd be a whole different podcast. We could really talk a lot about that. But that whole idea that allowing people to make short-term commitments is the way to go. I'm not even sure I would ask a person to commit for a year anymore. I would go for 3 months. You know, if it's a course, if it's something in religious ed, or even something 3 months, but one weekend, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, really, we have to think differently about what that means to be a volunteer today in the parish, and especially in our society. What does that look like today, and what's realistic and pragmatic? So no, Sarah, I don't have a gifts assessment, but Christy does on her website.
Which
And
I should have known maybe as a friend and colleague. Yikes. But we'll link that, and maybe if any of our listeners have an assessment that they use, please link to our podcast below wherever you're seeing this, or send us an email with your link, and we'll get that out there. I think that gifts assessments are important. I think some of us see people and see that they're wonderful at things, but can't necessarily name it. And I think that part of being able to orchestrate the gifts is being able to name it. And sometimes the gifts assessments help us to be able to do
And Sarah, my experience of most adults and every young person, they can't name their own gifts. So to put it into writing, here are the kinds of things we're looking for. Oh yeah, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Yeah, that I can do. You know, that kind of thing. So gifts assessment are helpful both for the ministry leader, but I think it's really good for the person in the pew to give them a chance to look at their strengths. And so I think that's really, I think that's good ministry. Even if they don't sign up for something, it's still good ministry that you're doing. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Everybody, this is Bob McCarty. I'm sure that if you're in ministry, you'll be able to see Bob somewhere across the country and across the world. He's always off doing ministry activities and events. And his new book out from Paulist Press, The Heart of a Disciple. Please. Oh, look at that! You have the book in hand. Wonderful.
Yeah, because it was sitting on my desk here, because I'm actually doing a retreat. I'm doing 3 retreats. I've been asked to do 3 different retreats based on the themes of the book. So
wonderful. That's
very
really
excited. Very excited about that.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you listening to us today. I hope it went by quickly as we talked well past our time today. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. Please click the like and subscribe. And if you find this important to the conversations you're having in your local ministry, please share and join the conversation in the comments below. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Catholic Leadership Network podcast.